Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U. And today we're going to be asking the question, what do you do before you write your next script? My hope is that everybody out here is writing screenplays on a regular basis, and at the same time that you're also improving your ability to create. So here's what we're going to do today. First, I'm going to give you 5 questions that you want to ask about this next script. These are the kinds of questions that can make scripts great in advance. And again, it depends on what your process is. A lot of people just come up with an idea and they start writing. But I'll tell you, if what you're trying to do is to sell, you're going to need these 5 questions. So I'll give you some tips on how to make your project more marketable. We'll analyze Shakespeare in Love as we're going to fit this series of questions. And then we'll talk about the upcoming class, the 30-day screenplay. Now, let me just tell you up front, this class came from a phone call I had with a producer where he called me up and he said, I'd interviewed him like a year before or something. He called me up and he says, I know you're good at this thing of creating classes. He says, I need a class on how to write a script in 30 days. And I was like, interesting. And at that time, we had nothing like that. And he said, I said, so why? And he goes, I've been a producer for 15 years. And he goes, I look at some of these writers and I just think, wow, they're just so amazing. He goes, I just have wanted to be a writer this whole time, and I just didn't know how. So I said, we have other classes. And he goes, I know, but I want this one. Now, he was being a little bossy. But I said, all right, let me call you back in a couple of days. I'll think about it. And 2 days later, I had a model. I'd brainstormed with about 8 different writers, and we'd come up with something. And about, I think it was like 3 months later, I called him up and said, all right, I've got it. I just finished creating this class. It starts here in 2 weeks. Do you want to be in it? And he said, yes. He took the class, by the way, went through the whole thing, and then I didn't hear from him for a year. A year later, when he called me back, he said something that I went, oh my God. And actually, I'll tell you that at the end. Let's just keep moving forward. But I'll tell you what he said and what he actually did with this class. So you'll find that really interesting. Let's just do it. 5 questions to elevate your script. First one, an incredibly important question if you want to sell screenplays. What is the engaging concept? You need to have some kind of high concept that it takes 30 seconds or less to be able to pitch it. And that actually becomes your first moment of pitching. The objective here, this is the standard objective for writing, but you want to build this into a single sentence. An expression of the human condition that is both universal and unique. These two together will give you something that really does have a chance of selling. So it needs to express an interesting conflict, right? It's like if all of these answers are average, you got nothing. But if all of them are incredibly interesting, you're in business. So the concept becomes your short pitch. It's the big hook of your story. Now, let me pause. Just get that. Anytime you're going to write a screenplay, from the moment an idea comes to you, you are searching for a way to say it that makes it incredibly interesting. Do that, and you're in business. If you don't do that, it pretty much doesn't matter what else you write, other than unless you're doing it as like a writing experiment or trying to elevate your skills or just creating a writing sample. But if you're trying to sell, this is number one. So One way to look at it, again, is from what's beneath the surface, the subtext. And I'm just going to give you a couple of really simple ways to think about this that can change everything for you. This, blah, blah, blah. People often give a pitch that could be just translated into blah, blah, blah. They're telling their story. But if you add this one little part on, not knowing that X, and now you tell us the big twist that's about to happen or the scheme that's going on or something like that. I'll show you in just a moment here. Or blah, 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 but what's really going on is X, and now you give us the layer beneath the surface. So here, Friday the 13th, and we can do this with 80% of the movies that are out there. A group of teenagers go to a cabin on a lake. Now, if you just stop right there, that's blah, blah, blah. That's just average stuff, right? Not knowing that they've invaded the home of a deranged killer. Take away that second part, nobody watches this movie. Nobody even hears about it. It doesn't even make it to the screen. But that second part is what made that movie amazing. So be thinking about it. And the title, by the way, that had never been done at that point. Great title for a horror franchise. So again, it's blah, 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 not knowing that, or blah, blah, blah. But what's really going on is the deeper layer. Easy way to pitch that instantly hooks people. And in this industry, it says we can sell this to audiences. Now, with Shakespeare in Love, they used a mystery, basically. Have you ever wondered how Shakespeare wrote the greatest love story in history? Not a strong pitch. When you add the other parts, it becomes very, very strong. So the most famous writer of all time wrote the most famous love story. The big question is, how did it happen? This is just another way to present it. And how does a writer go from being an unknown to being one of the greatest of all time? By the way, this is a question you should be asking for yourself. How do you go from being an unknown to being one of the greatest of all time? That's absolutely possible. There's just like a lot of things that once you know them, once you have the strategies, you'll be able to create at a much, much higher level. So, question number 2, how can I create lead characters that do these 3 things? First, they're intentional. They are designed to fulfill the concept. I spent 2 hours with a group today, and this is mostly what we were talking about, was how to make their lead characters intentional, how to make them the perfect characters for this story. And intentional means you design them. You look at the concept and you design the characters to not only fit that concept, but to be the perfect characters for it. Second, they are inherently dramatic. And this means if they are on the screen, drama automatically happens. Now, a lot of times people will create characters that it's like the only way that anything happens in their life is if it's forced on them. And I know there's the whole thing about making your protagonist reluctant, but that's only in the first act. Once we get to the end of the first act, then everything from that point on, they need to be dramatic. And your antagonist needs to be dramatic just because they walked in the room. They walk in, conflict happens. They walk in, intrigue happens. But once we get past that first act, we should be seeing protagonists that are in action, that are doing things, that drama is occurring, even if the main drama is just how impossibly difficult it is for them to survive. So, and then C, subtext or irony. When you're talking about your lead characters, you need to have subtext in there. I have talked with actors and actresses in this industry. In fact, I was interviewing three actors after when a movie came out at one point in front of an audience. And I got to this and I said, hey, so let me ask you, how important is it to you that the character you're playing has deep subtext? And all three of them talked about how important that was, how they were drawn to characters that have subtext, how they love playing those roles. And then I said, what do you do if you are given a character that doesn't have subtext? And the lead actress said, then I play my own. Now, we were in front of about 150 writers. And what you heard in there was people that were like, oh, kind of thing. Oh, she's going to rewrite my character because it doesn't have subtext. And it's like, yeah. She went on to explain the subtext is what the actors are actually playing. She said, the lines of dialogue are what I say. The actions are the physical movements I make. But she says, what I'm playing as an actress is the subtext. So you've got to make sure that your lead characters exist on multiple levels. Really important. So, and then this was what I was talking about earlier. The question really is, how do these characters deliver on the concept? Now, Will Shakespeare, there was irony in there. We've got the greatest writer in history who has writer's block. And keep in mind, in the real story, we have no idea, right? There's even questions as to whether Will Shakespeare actually existed or not, which is part of the intrigue and subtext and all of that kind of thing. But nobody has ever had a thought before that he had writer's block. So the people who created this story, this was something that gave that character irony, right? It was something that had people in the audience go, oh my God. It intrigued me. It had me go, oh my God, I never even thought for a second that he might have had writer's block. He's considered to be incredibly prolific. And he represents Romeo really, really well in this movie. Viola, she was desperate to be a player, which has her fitting into Will's world, right? She's not only somebody that he's in a relationship with, right? Because she loves poetry and she especially loves the poetry of Will Shakespeare, but she wanted to be a player. She wanted to be part of his world. And then she represents Juliet really well. So these characters are intentional. Now, a couple more things. Character subtext. You're asking just what about them needs to be hidden or that they can't talk about. And this is, again, something that you do intentionally. When people tell me, oh, I just kind of write and sooner or later it emerges, it's like, okay, but what if it doesn't emerge? Or what if what emerges is something that makes it so you can't sell that script? I think this is something, subtext should be intentional. When I first came to town, I had all of these writers and writing teachers telling me that, subtext just shows up. They had no idea how to do it. And they couldn't explain it to me at all. I had just come from the world of corporate training where anytime I'm trying to train somebody, I'm looking for very specific methods. What will get you there? So this is a question that you can ask and keep asking. It will help you get where you need to go. Now, the other thing is give them a subtext identity. If you have a character who's a spy, there's automatically subtext. There's all kinds of subtext. If they're an informant, they're hiding things. They don't want people to know because they could be killed. If they have multiple personalities, a lot of times you don't find that out until it surprises you. If they're a saboteur, This means somebody is living in an environment, they're working for somebody, they're in an organization, whatever, and their whole purpose is to take it down. If they're an imposter, they're hiding that. They're hiding that they don't know. They're hiding that they can't do something. If they're a con, well, same thing, right? It's or a criminal, or in the closet, or a cheater, or a chronic liar, right? Give your character some kind of subtext identity. It doesn't have to be bad or evil, right? Somebody could be a chronic liar and not understand why. Somebody could, well, I don't know about being a cheater, but it could also be that they have a dream they're going for that they're not telling anybody about. And we find that out later on when it surfaces. Just give them some kind of subtext identity, and you automatically just fill the script with subtext. So either way, they're dealing with an internal issue or a conflict, and they can't talk about it. That gives you something to write. That's amazing. And for the actor or actress, it gives them something to play. So, oh, and then there's this. And this is when you have ironic character subtext, it's amazing what you can do with this. This means whatever their identity is, they say, my identity is X, and they're also the opposite of that. I'll give you the first experience I ever had of this. My dad was a minister, and Jimmy Swaggart, who was a TV minister, came out and admitted that he said on TV, I have sinned. And then we found out that, yes, he is a minister, that's his identity, but he had an opposite identity also where he was paying hookers and sleeping with them. And that was happening over a long span of time. It wasn't something that was like, oops, something happened once. It was something that he was doing every week. And so he was this, and he was the opposite of that. Since then, I've seen lots and lots of characters. There are some politicians that they're the exact opposite of what they say. I've seen people who walked around with T-shirts that said one thing, and it was the one thing they had the biggest problem with. They were protesting something they were actually doing. I don't know if it was they had to cover it up or what it was, but this creates a pretty interesting character. Be thinking of that. So in this case, Shakespeare's living two lives, right? He has a love story with Viola, and he has the play that he's writing. If he wasn't living this life, he would be having way more problems in the other life. So these are his two lives. This one's hidden. It's just him and her that know, and the maid in that situation. And then this one is the one that's on the surface. Now let's look at Viola. Viola's living three lives. She's the actor Thomas Kent, who we see at the beginning as acting as if he's an actor. And in the end, she's still basically playing him, although they do finally come out and switch the roles. She has the love story with Will. That is a hidden life that's going on. And she's the future wife of Wessex, which is another life that's happening. So both of these characters have subtext built into them. Now, third, what's the transformational journey? And this, you know what a transformational journey is, right? It's more than just a character goes from one place to another. It's a change has happened with them, right? Something really important, an important change has happened for that character that they couldn't make in the beginning. If they could make that change in the beginning, it would have just simply been a choice, right? Do I go to a Mexican food restaurant today, Or do I go to a Chinese restaurant? Or do I go to, our favorite sandwich shop? It's just a choice. Do I go to college? It's just a choice. But if it's something that they could not possibly have done in the beginning, then it requires them to go through a series of difficult trials where they face major fears. It was not possible in the beginning because of something inside them. And now they're having to deal with that and they're having to make the change. So just keep that one thing in mind. If it's possible for them to do that in the beginning, you need a different journey. It's a transformational journey means they have made a major change that didn't exist. Keep that in mind. Okay. And then the journey needs to deliver powerfully on the concept. And again, keep this in mind. Your concept sells your script. It gets producers to read it. Then, of course, the writing has to be great. But you keep asking yourself, what's the concept that will sell it? What's the transformational journey also that will sell it? Because this transformational journey very likely is going to be the movie trailer. Think of how many times you've been in the movie theater, and they play 10 trailers before the movie. So many trailers that you often end up forgetting. What was I here to see? But they play 10 trailers. Most of them are the transformational journey. You see the whole story. It starts over here all the way to there, and it stops right before the ending. So we don't know what the ending is, but that's not what sells us. I interviewed a producer who does movie trailers for the studios, and he said, what sells us is this. We watch that story, and the audience says, I want to go on that journey. Right? I want to live that story that I just saw in 2 minutes. I want to live it. And that causes them to come back. So if your transformational journey is incredible, you have a much, much better chance that or producers are going to say yes, and that audiences will. Okay. So Viola, she goes from being an observer of plays to playing Juliet in the greatest love story ever. For a lot of actors and actresses, this kind of thing first completely changes their life. It's an incredible journey. It gives them the chance to do what they live for. In the beginning, she couldn't do this. It was not possible. Will made it possible. The writing of the story made it possible. Their love story made it possible. But she went through a change. Shakespeare goes from having writer's block, and let's be clear, he goes from being an average player as a writer. He has no love in the beginning. He goes from that to living and writing the greatest love story ever. And this is, at least according to this movie, is the moment that changes everything for him. So I think they're pretty interesting transformational journeys. Now, let's go a step further. How can I build subtext in at the structure and plot level? Again, be asking this because the subtext a lot of times is what causes people to watch these movies over and over again. So what are they hiding? What's beneath the surface? What layers could be revealed? And this, again, means you ask these questions until you find an answer that's going to make your story incredible. And then you build that in. So what's the main course of events that requires hiding things? This is the other part. You're looking for, once you figure out what they're hiding, then you say, okay, how do I set up a normal kind of situation? And this stuff is beneath the surface. Now, let me just give you some other versions here so you can see it. If you've got a movie that's a con, that there's some kind of major con going on, and we're watching the people who are doing the con, and we're watching the people who are getting conned, and all those kinds of things. There's, again, you've built all kinds of structure in at the plot level. If you've got a criminal enterprise, there's going to be all kinds of subtext. If you've got a hidden agenda, that's a major part of the story, there's going to be subtext built in at the plot level. If you have a scheme or deception and crime and investigation, there are other ways. By the way, I have seen subtext built in at the plot level on rom-coms before, where people are trying to get these two together, and that's what the whole story is about, or people are trying to keep them apart. So there's lots and lots of ways to do this. But if you, again, if you figure that out on a structure or a plot level, or on a major character level, you can create something pretty amazing. One last thing. If you look at this, C and D were what show up in Shakespeare in Love. Right? It's like they've got a hidden agenda and they've got a scheme and deception. Now, this movie, it didn't seem to be about deception. Like, if you would have told me after the first time I watched it, if you would have said, oh, the whole movie's about deception, I would have gone, no, it's not. It's about, and then I would have told you what I thought. But I went back and looked at it from this perspective. It was a love story, but there's major deception going on. And if you look at it, Viola is pretending to be Thomas Kent with Will at her side. They're deceiving Wessex together. They're deceiving the Queen. They're deceiving the audience. All the way through this story, there's all kinds of subtext built in. The writing on this was really, truly incredible. If you just go back and watch it one scene at a time and ask yourself, how much of this and how much other subtext is built into this, you will be blown away. So, and then the fifth question, what will make this script as interesting and engaging as possible? This should be like your whole purpose. Once you know your big story, once you know what the hook is of your story, what you think might sell it and all that kind of thing, everything from that point on is trying to make it interesting and engaging for the audience, right? So you should have at least one of these on a big picture level, either intrigue, mystery, irony, or emotional dilemma. Make sure, you should be able to look at your story right now. The one, if you're thinking about writing something, or if you're on a first draft right now, you should be able to look at it and say, okay, here's the big intrigue of the story, or here's the big mystery that will sell it, or here is the major irony that makes this story incredible and gives it so much deeper meaning. Or here's the emotional dilemma that these characters are in that we can't stop thinking about. Let me show you what I mean. The intrigue. First, Viola is tricking Shakespeare in the beginning, pretending to be Thomas Kent. Then the actors, and especially Wessex. Now, the two of them then are tricking everybody. That's part of this intrigue. The mystery, how did Shakespeare write the most famous love story of all time? The irony, the most famous writer of all time having writer's block. And the emotional dilemma, they love each other deeply, but she has to marry Wessex. How are they going to deal with that? Now, I want to pause for a second. I want you to look at this and ask yourself, if they took all four of those out, really took all four of those out with all the actions that went with them, with all the deception that went with them, the intrigue, the subtext, and everything else, if you take these four out of that movie, you got nothing. You've got, kind of a bland story. This stuff makes a tremendous difference for the audience, for the readers, for anyone who is connected with this project, the actors, the directors, everybody. So this stuff is incredibly important. You can't just do a surface story and get away with it. You need the stuff that's under the surface that makes it something truly special. So let me back up for a second. What's your plan? Think about that for a moment. And let me tell you the story of this producer. I didn't hear from him for a year. He took the 30-day class. And I thought, you know what? I created this class basically for him. Now, we had like 50 other writers going through it at the same time, but I thought he would come back and say something, and he just disappeared. So a year later, he calls me up, and I said, yeah, how you been, man? And he goes, great. I said, okay. I said, did you get that script written? He goes, yeah. He says, I wrote it in 30 days. And I was like, all right, excellent. Good for you. What can I do for you? And he goes, I just wanted to tell you my story. And I thought he's going to start telling me his screenplay. And here's what he said. He said, I wrote that script in 30 days. And he says, at the end, I wanted a little bit of a break. So I took a month off and went on vacation. He went to Europe. And he said, by the end of that month, I'd come up with my next script that I was going to write. So I came back here to LA, sat down, went to work, and I wrote another script. It took me 24 days for that second script using the model that I had presented. I said, okay, wow, good for you. And he says, so then I took another vacation. And I was like, really? He went to Australia. And he said, and I got another idea while I was there. I came back and I wrote that. He wrote 6 scripts in that 1 year, completed them, and he was starting to market them at the point that I was talking. He had already had one of them optioned. He was then marketing the other 5. So that was his plan. That's what got him started. That's what got him engaged. It basically completely changed his life. Now, think about this. How many scripts are you going to write in this next year? All right. Most people, if you ask them, they might have some ideas, but if you come to the end of the year and say, how many did you write? Most people will say, I wrote 1 or 2. For a lot of people, and this was my situation before, I thought it takes 4 to 6 months to write a script. That's what I thought. And that's because that's what I'd done. But based on this, what I found out was we can write a script in 30 days. And then you can write another script in 30 days. I had one person who went through this and wrote 12 scripts in the next year. It just depends on your situation. But the idea of being able to write 6 scripts is not at all out of reach once you have a strong model for it. So what would it mean to you if you could write a script in 30 days and go from creating an idea all the way to having pretty much a finished script? What would that do for you? It can make a huge difference on what's possible. It also means at any point, if you're about to start marketing to producers, you could have another script done in 30 days. And if you're pitching one script to producers, by the time you get done, you could have this next script done and go right back to them. So let me just walk you through this class. It's our 30-day class. I'll give you a special at the end. But what happens in this class is we walk you through every single step of creating a screenplay in 30 days, from the very beginning all the way till completion. And so this class is about really doing 4 things. The first is giving you step-by-step how to write it. I just went through the whole thing yesterday. And I was, looking, I made some changes, some improvements, but I was looking for what kind of insights, what can help me out. I'm in the midst of writing a script right now. And there were 4 things that I have on my list that I'm going to apply to this new script that I'm working on, just from going through and reading all of this stuff. Second, I'm going to teach you a high-speed writing model that we learned from interviewing 25 people who are experts at high-speed writing. It completely changed how I thought. I now use it anytime I'm in a spot where I need to get something done very quickly. I go right into high-speed writing mode. I've got a set of rules I'm going to give you for this, and you will practice them throughout this class. So you'll be able to take whatever speed you normally write at and double it. Go from writing a couple of pages a day to being able to write 10 or 15 if you want. We're also going to teach you this 30-day screenplay model, which is a complete model for how you think, how you create, the steps you take. And as you do it, every single day, you'll be writing the next part. Every day, you'll be creating something. We go through the first 5 or 6 days just generating ideas that ultimately are what makes your script something that has a chance of selling. So, this makes a huge difference for writers. And then you'll be empowered all the way through. So if you've ever had a problem with shutting down or being afraid or not getting your work done or those kinds of things, this can help you solve that. Now, a couple of other things. It's actually 29 lessons in 30 days because one of the lessons is a 2-day lesson. But in it, we also have a video library. First, how to master the 30-day script so that you have that. These are the things like the keys to coming up with a great concept. Then we launch into the 30-day script. This is the second video that gives you, again, a complete model. Now, you'll be getting lessons every day, but these videos make a big difference. From there, the videos 3 to 5 are writing the acts. So it walks you through exactly what each act is about, what you need in that act, what producers need to see. And then finally, how to finish powerfully. And finishing, there are some people that have problems with finishing. I had a problem with finishing. Finishing is incredibly important in this industry because if you can finish things and you always get the project finished, you will have a reputation as somebody that gets things done. Writers who can't finish, they start to get that reputation, and you absolutely don't want that reputation. But if you've been kind of plagued by not being able to finish things, this will give you solutions and strategies that you can apply right now so that you can finish and be successful. Now, the dates, this starts on December 2nd. This gives you a little time to brainstorm ideas and so that you come in with a project that you really like. The normal price on it is $299. Let me give you a special, and this is for the first 10 people that sign up. You can get in for $149. That is half price. So if you want to master this model, if you want to learn how to write screenplays in 30 days and actually become really good at it, come join us. Be one of the first 10. All you got to do is write this link down, bit.ly, bit.ly/write-my-next-scripts. No capitals, no spaces. Again, bit.ly/write-my-next-script. Write that down, put it in a browser where you normally put a web address, click return, and start this adventure. Besides writing a screenplay in 30 days, by the time we're done with this, you are going to have abilities you didn't have before. Let me just tell you 2 other quick stories. We had a writer who went through this program, and she called me up one day and she said, I have a producer who needs the script done right now. And I said, right now means, she said, he's going into production in 32 days. And I said, okay, yeah, use this model. She wrote for him. She wrote 11 drafts of the outline during the first 5 days. She said this model changed her life. She wouldn't have been able to survive any other way. We had another writer who was working with a producer. The producer came back, wanted to completely change their script, wanted to change the genre and everything else. The writer said she went to this model and used our outlining process in order to create an outline until she got the producer's approval. And then she wrote the script in 14 days using this model. So this stuff is absolutely possible, and it'll make you a star inside this industry. But it also will give you a deep level of confidence that you can do things that other writers can't. So if you want to change your life as a writer, and if you really want to be able to write quickly when you need to, and get another script done, you know, just keep asking yourself, what difference will it make for you if you had this ability that you could call on at any time? How many more scripts would you get written? How many more chances could you take? And by the way, who would you be as a writer a year from now with having written 5 or 6 or 10 scripts during that period of time? What kind of a difference can that make for you? So right now, if you're one of the first 10, you get it at half price. Again, here's the link. Come join us. It's an incredible class. I'm going to be going through it this time myself to write a script. I've got a project that I just outlined in the last 3 days, so I'm about to do this myself. So come join us and start to fall in love with who you can be as a writer and what's really possible for you. So with that, this is Hal Krosman, wishing you the absolute best in your writing, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Bye-bye, everyone.